have a totally new topic today, new chapter about retention. It's very special because most HR directors, most managing directors will tell you, well, it's all fine hiring the right people. It's great to develop the best people. But a major challenge is to retain the best people. I mean, losing the best people can be a real mess for a company. And every manager knows that in his or her team, in his or her department, there are at least 1, 2, 3 people from which they know that if they would leave, they would be in deep trouble. It's the same with all organizations. Look at our faculty. I mean, let's think about 2 or 3 professors. If they would leave, it would be a totally different faculty. For some, we would say, yeah, it would be nice if they would leave. Yeah. But for some, we would say that would be tragic. It would be really really a loss. So that's one point we're going to talk about this. Why is it so important to retain the best people? At the same time, when you look at companies, you have a department dealing with recruiting. Yeah? You have a department dealing with training and development. You have a department dealing with compensation benefits. You have these typical HR functions in most, at least bigger companies. You will hardly find a company with a retention function. There is no head of retention. I've never seen that. Or retention manager. So even though this is really a hot topic, a very important topic, it's very unclear what to do in that field. Okay? But there are a lot of things companies can do, and I try to really prepare an overview about the most important points around retention, the things which I think you really should know. The first thing is we're going to differentiate between different types of turnover, different types of fluctuation. Relevant, voluntary turnover, involuntary turnover. We're going to talk about turnover costs. How expensive is it to lose an employee? Can we calculate the risk of retention, the risk of losing certain employees? We're going to talk about this. And then we're going to talk a little bit about psychology. Yeah, why do people leave? I mean, in your career, at 1 or 2 or 3 times in your career, you will quit. Yeah, you will go to your boss saying, sorry, I'm leaving this company. What is the process behind? How did you come to this decision? And how do people make decisions like this? I mean, these are not daily decisions. These are significant decisions. So let's talk about a little bit about psychology, what makes people stay with a company, what makes people leave in the company. Okay? And then we're going to talk about actions. Really, what are strategies? What can companies really do to retain the people? I mean, people are free, of course. People can go wherever they want. That's good. Yeah. Is there anything I can do as a company, a strategy, to retain my best people? Okay? So, this is the agenda for this particular chapter. If you look at an HR textbook, you will hardly find a chapter around retention. Also to my surprise. Because retention is such a hot topic. But the point is really, there are still not these clear, understood measures, strategies, as we know, for instance, with compensation benefit. We know how to create a compensation structure. We know how to run an assessment center. We know how to run talent management. These are very clear concepts, but with retention it's still unclear. And there are a lot of beliefs out there. I mean, these beliefs which you find on these slides is not. I put these on this slide because they are true. It's It's what I hear. Yeah, when I talk to managers, when I talk to HR directors about turnover, about retention, I always hear these kinds of sentences. These are common beliefs. I think at the end of this chapter, you should be able to have an opinion on these different beliefs, to which extent they really are true or not. Yeah, but this is mirroring a little bit the thinking around turnover and retention. People who join for money leave for money. Yeah, yeah. Then many people say, and probably this is true. Yeah? We're gonna see it to which extent this is really true. People join companies and leave bosses. Yeah, you join Google because you think, wow, Google, it's a great company. But when you quit Google, you quit it because your boss is an idiot. So you join Bosch because, wow, Bosch. But you leave because you can't stand working with your boss. Yeah. That's one of these common beliefs, which you hear many, many times. Some would say you don't need to care about retention at all. You don't need to do anything here. If you do well with all the rest, if you pay the people well, compensation benefit. If leadership is okay, yeah. If the people have a perspective in the companies, talent management, training, development. If you take care about all the things which we have spoken in the last sessions, yeah. If you have flexible working hours, if you like the workplace, if you're satisfied, if all these things are fine, you don't have to care about retention. Then the people automatically stay. Maybe not. Yeah. Employees are free. They can do what they want. It's great. At the end of the day, retention is all about leadership. Yes, we know from studies that when you do research about why people leave, people join companies, leave bosses, we find that 80% it's about the boss. Yeah, it's about leadership. It's about your relation between you and your immediate supervisor. So we can say it's all about leadership. I don't think so. There is much more in it. Yeah, losing an employee leads to costs 1 to 2 times of his or her annual salary. This is such a rule of thumb which you hear many times. So if somebody earns, let's say, 80,000 a year, and you lose this person, okay, that costs the company between 80 and 160,000 euro. Wow. Is that true? Quite a lot. We're going to look at this. The strongest are the first to leave the company. If a company really struggles, if they are in a crisis, yeah, the best people are the ones that leave first. Is that true? Or are the best those who stick with the company? Say, oh, the best are those that also stay with the company in crisis, during crisis. Yeah. Happy employees prefer to stay. If you have happy people, they stay. Turnover is good. It's not good to have a turnover rate of less than 1%. This is what many companies say. To a certain extent, it's good when you lose people, because then you get new people and you always get this kind of fresh blood. So this is a collection of common beliefs, not scientifically proven, but this is what you find about retention when you talk about with the people outside in the company. So we're gonna put some truth into this. Okay, let's have a very structured view on retention. I would like to share with you some things which I believe, or think, not believe, I really think that these are valid. So let's start with some fundamental terms. Turnover. Turnover, the process in which employees leave the organization have to be replaced. Okay, that's turnover. Losing people. People leave the company. And the first thing you have to understand is that there's a difference between voluntary turnover, an employee is leaving the company voluntarily, without pressure, in most cases against the wish of the company. Okay, this is what we talk about, voluntary turnover. Okay, so whenever we talk about retention, turnover, this is what we talk about. It's not about involuntary turnover. That means the company makes the employee leave the company. Lay off, firing. This is not meant with turnover in this particular context. Early turnover is a very special type of turnover. It's turnover that happens in the very first weeks and months of employment. I'm going to talk about what that means. Because early turnover is something special. That relates to some very special reasons why people leave in the very first weeks and months. Probably because their expectations were not met and they realized in the very first weeks that, wow, this is not the company I can work for. Okay, a turnover rate is defined here. The number of employees leaving the company in a year divided by the number of employees in mid of the year. So if you have turnover rate of, let's say, 5%, and in a company you have 1,000 people, at the end of June, 5% means 50 people leave the company during the year. 50%. I mean, that's clear, okay? So, that's simple. Just to lay a ground for some fundamental terms. What would you guess? How is turnover rate at a company like BMW? What would you guess? 5%, 20%, 50%, 15, 12. What would you guess? Just do. Less than 5. Yeah.
Is it around 25?
Around 20?
Because I know that many people struggle with the corporate culture. They don't feel free to act.
Okay.
That's why I guess maybe they leave, but maybe they just adapt.
People tend to adapt with the corporation, with the company. With BMW, it's really low, below 1%. The people that work with BMW, they are proud working with that company. They stick with their company for the rest of their life. It's the same with companies like Daimler. People who work at Daimler for the rest of their life. You are a Daimlerian. In earlier days, it was the best thing that could happen to you. Working at Daimler was the safest thing. You were proud. People who work at Bosch, they work at Bosch for their entire life. You have no turnover. In retail, Aldi. Let's look at Aldi. Lidl is the same. How is early turnover? Turnover in the first 6 months at a company like Aldi. 20-30% around this. Is that high? Yeah, that's much. So you have this range between nearly zero and in some industries, professional service industry, consulting. That's normal. You have a turnover rate of 20-30%. That's normal. People don't work as consultants for their entire life. I mean, it's stressful. In some other companies, you stay with it. Here at the university, I don't consider leaving this faculty for the rest of my life. I will stay there. I love to be here. Why should I change? Professors don't change. In most cases. So there is a difference between industries, different jobs, companies. But now, the important point, which I want to understand, want you to understand. There were studies that made research about the question: how is the relation between performance of the people and turnover? Okay, or in other terms, who leaves? Yeah? Who leaves the company? Are these the strong people, the weak people, those in the middle? Who leaves the company? Yeah? And when we take together all studies which were there in a kind of meta study, and this is published here in this article, you will find something like this. Yeah? You have here performance, low performance, middle, high. Here you have turnover. And you see the shape of the curve is a U shape, which means that who leaves? A low performer leave, and the high performer leave. And those in the middle, they tend to stay. Why do low performers leave the company? I mean, you could also say the low performers, they don't have options. If you're a low performer, you don't get another job, so you'd rather stay with your company as long as possible. Well, but why do low performers leave the company?
Maybe company make them with like involuntary turnover.
It's really voluntary. It's about voluntary turnover. They leave voluntarily. It's not that they are fired. I mean, that's okay. Say, low performer, I fire them. That's clear. No, we talk about voluntary turnover. Why do people that are low performer, which are low performers, why do they leave voluntarily?
Maybe that's why they are low performers, because they just don't fit the cultural context.
Okay, interesting.
Try to
Interesting.
do something there, and then you see it's not.
Yeah. Interesting point. They have never adapted to the corporation.
Yeah.
They have never felt at home there. They always felt like foreigners there, and so they have a very limited loyalty to the company, very little commitment to the company, and that's why the performance is always also low. So very interesting point. Good theory. Great. Love it.
Maybe in some contents they engage with some conflict with their peers or the
Yeah.
supervisors.
If you're a low performer, you have conflicts with your peers. The others have to do the work. Yeah. So you are not the best friend of the colleagues, and
Also, you're not valued as.
you're not valued. Yeah. You don't get any acknowledgement. And, I mean, we can assume that people want to do a good job, as you will. You want to be good in what you do, and once you feel that you can't really perform in your job, I mean, you will have hard time standing up in the morning. Because I don't want to stand up to start the next day as a loser. I don't want to be a loser, so I should work somewhere else. And with the high performance, it's clear. I mean, the high performers, they have options. They have alternatives. Yes, high performers are, in many cases, those who are more mobile, more flexible, maybe more open, have good networks. Networks always help in finding another career. So, message number one, which I want you to take home here. When a company tells you, like BMW, our turnover rate is 1%, your reaction in the future will be what?
They don't have a lot of low skill or low performing. They don't have a lot of high performing.
Okay. Maybe. No, but really, if a company tells you, "Oh, I'm proud, we have a turnover rate of just 2%," will you say, "Wow, cool"? Yes. Or how will you respond? The 1%, the 2% tell us nothing. Yeah? The average tells us nothing. The question is, how is turnover with your high performance? And this is probably much higher than your average turnover rate. So whenever somebody tells me, well, we are in a lucky situation, our turnover rate is below 5%, I say, I don't care. It tells us nothing. You have to have a differentiated look on this. So the question is, and I put this in this very simple picture here, the question is, I don't care about turnover rate on average. The question is, how is turnover rate with your high performers? Because that really matters. And probably turnover rate with your high performance is much higher than your average turnover rate. And the second point, which is relevant, is how is your turnover rate in your key functions? Yeah, compared to the turnover rate in your non-key functions. Yeah. So again, a key function, yeah, at BMW is definitely R&D. R&D is so key for a company like BMW, research and development. So the question is not how is turnover in the entire company. The question is how is turnover rate in your most important, most critical functions. Yeah, that really matters. So I want you to take this home. To have a more differentiated view on turnover. So, next point. How much does it cost to lose an employee? Question to you. If you lose an employee, there is an employee, a really high-valued, high-performing employee, Bernd, yeah? Bernd is leaving the job. He's going somewhere else. How much does it cost? To what kind of cost does that lead? Huh? Spontaneous answers? Huh?
I would say it's not only even the cost, like the annual salary, but maybe if you go to the competitor, then I'll really lose.
So Bernd goes to the competitors, takes his knowledge with him, yeah, is weakening the current employer, is strengthening the new employer, yeah, the competitor probably. Yeah, what else? Yeah?
Maybe he has trained already, and if he loses the company,
He's trained and now he goes and takes his knowledge with him. Yeah, lost investment. Right, yeah. You have to hire a new person. Yeah, you have all these hiring costs. Yeah, maybe you have to post an ad, you engage an executive search consultant. How much does it cost to engage an executive search consultant, Personalberatung? How much does it cost? If you engage a headhunter, okay, help me find a new employee to fill the position of Bernd. How much does it cost? Do you remember?
Something like 30% of the salary?
Yes, 1/3. 1/3 of the annual salary. That's a lot. Yeah. So this picture is taken from a report from Corporate Leadership Council, a leading global institute for benchmarking in HR. And I like this picture because it shows that there are costs related to turnover which are somehow direct visible. I mean, recruiting costs are visible. You get an invoice for it. Yeah? You really have to pay the money. You engage a headhunter, you have to pay for it. You post an ad, you have to pay for it. These are really visible, tangible costs. But with turnover, there are a lot of costs which are somehow intangible, which are hidden. What you said, yeah? You lose the employee goes to the competitor. How much does that cost? You don't know. It's hard to calculate. Right? You have lost productivity of other employees. And that could happen. You are a team of 8 people, and the best employee in your team is leaving. That's the message to the others, saying there is something better out there. Yeah. So there are 7 people left. Yeah, without Bernd, knowing that Bernd tells you there is something better out there. That can reduce your morale. That can reduce your productivity. Yeah? And you have a new employee. You have to integrate this new employee, and the new employee must cope with you. I mean, it takes a while to really get back to the old level of performance. So these are all these kind of intangible, hidden costs that appear through turnover, right? In different phases, yeah. Before the employee is leaving, while the position is vacant, not filled, yeah, you have opportunity costs, yeah. But also then when the new employee is hired, the new employee must get trained, and the existing employees, they must really help the new employee, support the new employee in getting integrated. Yeah. So this is one picture. It's not that you should learn these different points, it's just the message that there are hidden costs, visible costs. I made a calculation. Yeah, I made a little calculation. So we have an employee. His or her annual salary is 60,000 euro. Okay, starting point. Now, we said if we lose this employee, we have to hire a new one. And my guess, it's just an assumption, a rough assumption, is that cost per hire is about 10% of the annual salary. That's reasonable. I think that's reasonable. Maybe can be 15 or can be 8. I don't know. That's reasonable. Yeah, 6,000 euro. Then we have onboarding costs. Yeah, we have the new employee, which must get trained off the job somewhere. 12,000. Let's say 20% of annual salary. Onboarding costs. Loss of motivation of the former employee. Yeah, there is a rule of thumb saying Bernd, who just has left the company, had a lower motivation in the last month of employment. I mean, that's clear. If you leave your job, will you work on 120% until the last day? No. You will slow down a bit. I'm gonna leave anyhow. So motivation goes down. You already think about your future somewhere else. So 50% less performance in the last 3 months of employment. Yeah. Now there is a very simple assumption. Yeah. If an employee costs 60,000 a year, 60,000, we assume that the value delivered by the employee, the value, the added value, the value of the work, so to speak, should be at least 60,000. Huh? Otherwise, the employee would not pay off. If I would have an employee and the value of the work of this employee would be only 20,000, but I pay 50,000 a year, that would not pay off. So the fundamental idea here is that an employee that costs 60,000 a year, his salary, should add value by at least 60,000 a year. Otherwise, the employee would not pay off. So when we say 50% less performance in the last 3 months, I simply calculated 3 months. That's one quarter of 60,000. 15,000. 50% of it, it's 7,500 euro. Okay. 10% less performance of 5 colleagues with similar salary during 4 months. The productivity losses of the colleagues, just as I said. Yeah. Reduced morale. A team does not perform well when it's losing a team member. They have to cope. They have to find new ways. Yeah. The new employee. There's a rule of thumb saying a new employee will perform only 50% in the first 6 months compared to an employee who already is established. Right? Okay, that's different for that really differs for different jobs, for different industries. That's clear. That's just the rule of thumb, but it's reasonable. Opportunity costs, no value creation for 2 months due to vacant position. These are just assumptions. But when we take these assumptions and we calculate the cost, then this leads to 60,500. It's a little bit more than one annual salary in this particular example. Okay. I show you this also because in HR, some used to say HR is about people. Hey, it's people. That's soft. Some say soft is hard. You can calculate things in terms of euro, and you have to. Yeah? My personal belief really is that in HR, we are in a very good position to calculate things in euro, and we have to. Yeah, it's a mistake saying as HR person, well, I cannot express things in terms of euro. If you're not able to express things in terms of euro, you get never hurt by the CFO. Okay? It's like in marketing. In marketing is also soft. You cannot calculate how is the payoff of certain campaign. You can't. But you do. You estimate it. So this is an example of how you can really estimate costs in an HR context. Okay? There was a study, and I wanted to share with you because I really like this. Yeah, there's a book published by Phillips, one of the leading thinkers in HR, really. And the name of the book is Managing Talent Retention and ROI Approach. And there is a study cited which is really extreme. I mean, they really estimated how are the turnover costs for different jobs as a percentage of the annual salary. You remember? Just with our example here, yeah, it's turnover costs are one-time annual salary. Here, based on this calculation, we find that for some jobs, it's more than 100% of the annual salary. Look at here, technical jobs, whatever that is. It's between 100% and 150% of annual salary. Here, engineers, yeah, 200% of annual salary to 300% of annual salary. Yeah. Here, specialists, whatever that is. I mean, that's very vague. I took the original terms from the study. It shows you just that it's kind of reasonable, at least based on this study, saying if you lose a person, it's indeed, yeah, somewhere between 100% and 200% of the annual salary. So this common belief, this rule of thumb, is kind of reasonable. And if I would have asked you at the beginning of this session, how would you estimate the cost of turnover? You would not have come up with such an estimation. You might have said, losing an employee costs 20,000 euro or 30,000. No, it's much, much more. It's significant. In some cases, if you lose one person in a team, the team is down. Yeah. For some companies, if you lose 2-3 people, it's tragic. It can really kill the business. Okay? So, this is why turnover is so important topic. Now, the question is, what can we do? Yeah, what can we do? What are real things in managing retention? And the first thing what you can do is to understand turnover risk. Yeah? This is a very first step. And this is a very simple picture. And this absolutely makes sense. And it's really taken from practice. Whenever we talk about risk, and retention is about risks, we always look at two things. Always. That always applies for any type of risk analysis. We look at how is the likelihood that a certain incident happens. Yeah, in this case, it's turnover. How is the likelihood of turnover? How likely is it that we lose a specific person? Yeah, and if we lose the person, how big is the impact? So, what are the consequences, so to speak? For some people, we know that they will never leave. They are married with the company. They bought a house nearby. They will stay here for the rest of their life. We know this. But even if they would leave, Peters, if he would leave, would be okay. Would not be a problem. I mean, Pete, Yeah. He's not so strong. He's okay. Doing a good job. While here with Garth McGrath. See that? Oh, likelihood seems to be high with this guy. Yeah. Would not be a surprise if he would leave the company. You know it. And when he will leave, we are in deep trouble. Okay? How can we tell whether somebody will leave or not? How can we tell?
If we measure his performance and then we really know that he's a high potential, and at the same time our company doesn't give him the best opportunities, maybe he would go for a better one.
The person is very good, shows a high performance, but tells you that I don't have a perspective here. Yeah, I don't get acknowledged for what I do. Yeah, think okay, probably this guy will look somewhere else. Right? Okay. Yeah. Something else?
Consulting with his peers, if you can do that, of course, because if you don't like your position or your company, you're definitely going to complain to somebody about it.
Yeah, you
Unless you're
complain.
introverted.
You complain. You talk to your colleagues. You know, I can't understand why I work here. I mean, you talk about this, of course. I mean, here are some indicators. They're really simple, not complete. But we know this from practice. If you have a sudden drop in performance, you see a person who did always a good job, but suddenly performance is down. Yeah. You have this frequent short-term absence. Yeah. It happens more often. Yeah, that an employee is not showing up at work, is sick for a day, at Monday, suddenly sick at Friday afternoon. Yeah, you see that some people get isolated somehow. Yeah, you have your department party, and there's a person who was always there, suddenly stopped showing up. Yeah? And you ask yourself, hey, what happened to Bernd? He's not there. And last time he was also not there. I haven't seen him for a while. Where is he? Yeah. And also when we go for lunch together, where is he? Get isolated. Yeah? Complaints. You hear an employee constantly complaining about things, glorifying other companies. Yeah? Oh, I have read an article about Google. That must be such a great company. In a team meeting, you ask, who is willing to take over responsibility for this project? And there are some people who used to raise their hand, but now stop raising their hands, saying, well, I don't want to take over responsibility, especially for the long-term things, yeah, because they are already somewhere else. Yeah, pessimism. You feel that this person don't look forward. Yeah, they seem not to have the perspective inside the company. So that's not scientific, really. Yeah, this is not scientifically proven. That's really taken from practice. If you talk to managers, how can you feel whether somebody will leave or not? You say, well, these are these typical indicators. And sometimes in this annual performance appraisal, you talk to the employee. Yeah, in some companies, it's part of this annual performance appraisal, also talking about the future. You talk with as a supervisor, you talk to the employee. Say, what is your future inside this company in the next 2 or 3 years? Where do you see yourself? And you understand from this conversation whether a person really sees a future in this company. Yeah. Okay? So that leads then to this kind of picture. And of course, here you will focus on Garth, you will focus on John, you will focus on Rock Stewart. Talk to these people. Okay, what's wrong with these people? What can we do to retain these people? And we're going to talk about this. Okay, but that's the very first step, this kind of individual risk analysis. Okay. Now, next step. What makes people stay? What makes people leave? And here is a study where executives, so top managers, were asked, what makes it hard to retain the best people? Yeah. The original question is shown here. Which of the following factors are most likely to hinder your company's ability to retain talented employees over the next 3 years? Very complicated question. Anyhow, what makes it hard to retain the best people? And you see on top, lack of career opportunities and development path. Salaries do not compare favorably with industry peers. Undesirable work-life balance. This is the view of top management. I don't show you this because I would think that they are true. I think they are incredibly wrong. That's an executive view. I think they are wrong. I don't think that people leave a company only because they lack a career perspective. I don't think that it's primarily about money. I don't think so. And I don't think that it's primarily about work-life balance. I think there are some other reasons why people leave or why they stay. Yeah. And let's talk about this. And before we talk about this, I would like to share with you another study. Yeah? A very old study done in the 30s in Austria. In Austria, there was a village called Marienthal. Still exists. And in Marienthal, there was a company where 2,500 employees were employed in the textile industry. So it's a picture of this company. And from one day to another, the entire plant was shut down, closed. So 2,500 people got unemployed from one day to another. And the interesting point is that the entire village, Marienthal, existed only because of this company. So the entire village became unemployed from one day to another. Okay. Also, we still have things like this, where you have in one village, one company, and the entire village is working in this company. And if this company would not be there, the village would not be there. Yeah, we have something. Sometimes we have extreme situations like this. So there were some scientists from the University of Vienna, and they took this chance to make a study about unemployment, or in other terms, what is the meaning of work? What is the meaning of work? What happens to people when they got unemployed? Yeah. And they thought that if you look at the impact of unemployment, you get a better understanding about what is the meaning of work. So the traditional understanding was always that people work because they want to earn money. Why do you work? Because you have to earn money. You have to feed your family. That's the reason why you work. Why else? But this study showed something else. In this study, this research team around Marie Jahoda, they did a lot of different things. They observed the people. When do they stand up in the morning? When do they go to bed? How do they change their social interaction behavior? Do they still meet, or do they isolate themselves in their private spheres? They analyzed the wish lists of the kids at Christmas, and looked how the expectations of the children changed over the years. They measured how fast the people go. They made interviews with the people talking with them about their future perspectives. I talked with them about, when you think about next year, how will it be? So they did a lot of different things to understand the consequences of unemployment. It's a very interesting book, really. And this analysis led to a concept which we named the so-called psychological contract. Very important concept. The psychological contract, the most important term here, of course, is psychologically. I mean, we all know what a contract is. But a contract is an agreement between two parties. In this particular sense, between the employee and the company. And it's not about the written contract. It's not about the legal contract, the working contract or so. It's about the psychological contract. And the psychological contract is not written somewhere. But it's a hidden, implicit agreement of the give and take of employees and the company. And this list shows some things. Of course, as an employer, I give salary. You get money. You get benefits. But it's much more. As an employer, I offer social contacts. If you work here, you meet people. You can build a network. Like with the study. I mean, you are here to learn, but sorry, you are not only here to learn. You are also here to make friends for the rest of your life. We haven't agreed on this, but it's an expectation which you have. Yeah, and we offer this. Yeah, tasks. Hey, you get a task. A task, that's work. Yes, a task is great. It's good for people to have a task, because a task makes you stand up in the morning. You learn. You get trained. Every day you work, you might learn something more, and that's something a company offers. Or something like an image. Yeah, as I said earlier, for many people it's great to work at BMW or Daimler. Say, well, hey, I work at Daimler. Ooh, yeah. So I ask at a party, what do you do? Where do you work? I say, oh, I work at Google. Wow. Yeah, it's better than saying I work at Max Fleischer Electric in Bad Solgau. Yeah. So you benefit maybe from the image of the company, and it provides you a kind of identity. I am a Siemensian. Yeah, and it's a part of my identity. Yeah, and it's security. It makes me sleep well at night because I feel that I can feed my family, and I don't have to worry about the next years, about the future. And I get some values. The company made me think open, globally. I learned many values from the company. I learned from the company that it's good to trust each other. So you also absorb the values of the company which are provided by the company. A perspective. So the list is long and it's not complete. An employer gives you a lot of things, yeah, and it's much more than just the salary. At the same time, as employee, I give. Yeah, okay, I show my performance. Yeah, I'm creative. I'm generating new ideas from which the company then can benefit. I give my capabilities. I give my knowledge. Yeah. To solve problems from which then the company can benefit. I give my talent, my energy, yeah, my time, maybe my most precious things, my health. I bring in my social networks, maybe. Yeah, I bring in maybe customers. So it's what I just want you to understand is that with a psychological contract, it's the question about what is the give and take between employer and employees? And it's much more than just what we think initially from a legal point of view. And these psychological contracts, they change over generations. I know that your psychological contract with your company will be different than the one of your parents and your grandparents, because you expect different things and you give different things. So it's a very good exercise also with HR directors, with managers, always to think, let's talk about the psychological contract. What is the give and what is the take? And how will this change in the future? Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, now let's take this one step further and talk about retention. Yeah. If you look at an HR textbook, you will hardly find a chapter around retention. Also, to my surprise, because retention is such a hot topic. But the point is really, there are still not these clear, understood measures, strategies, as we know, for instance, with compensation benefit. We know how to create a compensation structure. We know how to run an assessment center. We know how to run talent management. These are very clear concepts, but with retention it's still unclear. And there are a lot of beliefs out there. I mean, these beliefs which you find on these slides is not. I put these on this slide because they are true. It's what I hear. Yeah, when I talk to managers, when I talk to HR directors about turnover, about retention, I always hear these kinds of sentences. These are common beliefs. I think at the end of this chapter, you should be able to have an opinion on these different beliefs, to which extent they really are true or not. Yeah, but this is mirroring a little bit the thinking around turnover and retention. People who join for money leave for money. Yeah, yeah. We have a totally new topic today, new chapter about retention. It's very special because most HR directors, most managing directors will tell you, well, it's all fine hiring the right people. It's great to develop the best people, but a major challenge is to retain the best people. I mean, losing the best people can be a real mess for a company. And every manager knows that in his or her team, in his or her department, there are at least 1, 2, 3 people from which they know that if they would leave, they would be in deep trouble. It's the same with all organizations. Look at our faculty. I mean, let's think about 2 or 3 professors. If they would leave, it would be a totally different faculty. For some, we would say, yeah, it would be nice if they would leave. Yeah, but for some, we would say that would be tragic. It would be really, it would be really a loss. So that's one point we're going to talk about this. Why is it so important to retain the best people? At the same time, when you look at companies, you have a department dealing with recruiting. Yeah, you have a department dealing with training and development. You have a department dealing with compensation benefits. You have these typical HR functions in most, at least bigger companies. You will hardly find a company with a retention function. There is no head of retention. I've never seen that. Or retention manager. So even though this is really a hot topic, a very important topic, it's very unclear what to do in that field. Okay? But there are a lot of things companies can do, and I try to really prepare an overview about the most important points around retention, the things which I think you really should know. The first thing is we're going to differentiate between different types of turnover, different types of fluctuation. Relevant, voluntary turnover, involuntary turnover. We're going to talk about turnover costs. How expensive is it to lose an employee? can we calculate the risk of retention, the risk of losing certain employees? We're going to talk about this. And then we're going to talk a little bit about psychology. Yeah, why do people leave? I mean, in your career, at 1 or 2 or 3 times in your career, you will quit. Yeah, you will go to your boss saying, sorry, I'm leaving this company. What is the process behind? How did you come to this decision? And how do people make decisions like this? I mean, these are not daily decisions. These are significant decisions. So let's talk about a little bit about psychology, what makes people stay with a company, what makes people leave in the company. Okay? And then we're going to talk about actions. Really, what are strategies? What can companies really do to retain the people? I mean, people are free, of course. People can go wherever they want. That's good. Yeah. Is there anything I can do as a company, a strategy, to retain my best people? Okay? So, this is the agenda for this particular chapter. And many people say, and probably this is true, yeah? We're going to see it to which extent this is really true. People join companies and leave bosses. Yeah? You join Google because you think, wow, Google, it's a great company. But when you quit Google, you quit it because your boss is an idiot. So you join Bosch because, wow, Bosch. But you leave because you can't stand working with your boss. Yeah. That's one of these common beliefs, which you hear many, many times. Some would say you don't need to care about retention at all. You don't need to do anything here. If you do well with all the rest, if you pay the people well, compensation benefit. If leadership is okay, yeah. If the people have a perspective in the companies, talent management, training, development. If you take care about all the things which we have spoken in the last sessions, yeah. If you have flexible working hours, if you like the workplace, if you're satisfied, if all these things are fine, you don't have to care about retention. Then the people automatically stay. Maybe not. Yeah. Employees are free.